There was Shiva, which was just dynamite stuff. There was No True Skunk, and they thought it was interesting back then. A little story. I said, "Wow, don't you have anything that smells like skunk?"
Yeah.
And they said, "Wow, we've heard about this skunk," but I said, "What is a skunk? What does it smell like?" And I said, "It's like the little black animals with the white stripe down the back, and they put off this horrible scent." Because we don't have those. They said, "That's why you never really smelled skunk, did you?" So they would call it skunk, but it wasn't like true American, sort of North American skunk at that point.
Yeah,
but, they're fantastic. Compared to, at that point, people were smoking brown weed with seeds in it that was usually brick or compressed from Mexico or wherever they were drying it in the field.
This is the Empire State of Cannabis. Welcome to another episode of Empire State of Cannabis. This is a special one. So I have my father, Jim Castetter, here. He's a chief sales officer at Empire Standard. He's also a co-founder at Castetter Sustainability Group. Also co-founded Sovereign Vines, and all the way back in '97 with Hemp Wine America. So we'll get into that story. We'll get into a little bit about his perspective on the New York cannabis industry, being a vet and OG. Welcome to the show here, Dad.
Thanks, Gillen. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you let us know exactly how it started. So we're going back about a year after I was born. I was born in 1996. And so 97, 96, what was going on then, and what drove you to start Hemp Wine?
Okay, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to go back a few years before you were born, honestly. And it was me and your mom getting married, being very interested in cannabis at that point, and trying to break in and get a little bit more knowledge out of it. So what we did is when we got married, we planned our honeymoon to go to Holland. We went to one other place, and then we went to Amsterdam. And the reason we went to Amsterdam is because I remember very clearly a New York Times magazine comes in, the Sunday New York Times. On the cover, they had a beautiful flower, stuff that we only saw in catalogs here in the United States. Said, this is where we got to go. The story had this little bit about this one magical little place that attracted a lot of growers and knowledge, and they were really trying to change the laws in Amsterdam at that point and throughout Holland. Mom and I made the pilgrimage out there. We actually ended up at Positronics. Positronics was the hub of Amsterdam. That's where all the great growers were. That's where all the great seeds were coming from. That's where all the great knowledge was coming out of. I spent a week there, Mom and I both, drinking lovely herbal tea and learning about everything I could about cannabis.
So was Amsterdam as it's known as like the cannabis place back then, or not really?
Well, it was starting to get known as the cannabis place. Wasn't legal, was tolerated. I remember going into a couple of the coffee shops when we first arrived, and it was what we always envisioned. Going in, looking at several different varietals, very nice, grabbing a tea, a couple rolling papers and a filter, and going to the table, and then enjoying your smoke and your beverage, and then going through a wonderful city. That's what we always thought it was going to be like. And then there was the commercial coffee shops too, with the Bulldog and so on and so forth.
So what were you looking to get there when you found Positronics? What were you looking for?
Mainly, I was looking for knowledge on drying and curing. That was an area that I was lacking a little bit of skill in. I had ruined a couple efforts previously to that because I had dried it too fast. I had dried it incorrectly, so on and so forth. So I was looking for that knowledge, but I learned so much more. Really about some of the fine genetics that were out there. A lot of the people at Positronics were traveling throughout the world, bringing in seeds from, say, India, from Nepal, from going down into Africa, and then bringing these back and learning how to create new strains of cannabis at that point.
And what were some of the big strains that they were creating?
Oh, wow. There was Northern Lights 1. I think I was the first to bring that back into the United States, as a matter of fact. I don't want to talk about that, but it was a fun adventure. There was Shiva, which was just dynamite dynamite stuff. There was no true skunk. And they thought it was interesting back then, a little story. I said, wow, don't you have anything that smells like skunk?
Yeah.
And they said, wow, we've heard about this skunk, but I said, what is a skunk? What does it smell like? And I said, it's like the little black animals with the white stripe down the back, and they put off this horrible scent. Because we don't have those. They said, that's why you never really smelled skunk, did you? So they would call it skunk, but it wasn't like true American, sort of North American skunk at that point.
Yeah,
but, they're fantastic. Compared to, at that point, people were smoking brown weed with seeds in it that was usually brick or compressed from Mexico or wherever they were drying it in the field. And you had to convince people with green flour that no, that's homegrown. No, that's homegrown. No, it's better. How come there's no seeds in it? Because it's better. And that took a while.
Wow.
in the marijuana world.
I mean, it's a completely different context because you look at now and it's all about, you've got all these magazines, you've got, Cannabis Cup.
You had High Times, and then you had Hemp Times.
You had High Times and Hemp Times. So what was it there that you found hemp wine on that trip?
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, after spending my week in Positronics, I became friends with one of the big growers there, Mao, and Mao started Nirvana Seed Company, Nirvana Home Brews. He had a range of the Nirvana line. Excellent grower. Took me to a place in Germany where they were doing a White Widow that was absolutely mind-blowing. Just wonderful cultivator. And at a party one night there, we're sitting in the early hours of the morning, and he's like, why don't you do the wine in the United States? I've got the oil that we put in, which is a terpene, actually, and terpenes are just becoming, the rage. But boy, we were using terpenes back in the mid-'90s, skewed off of cannabis plants there, grown by the border.
Wow.
So it's, and they had no idea what it was either. The U.S. government had no idea. So
it's truly from hemp, you think, or is it from?
Oh, that was from cannabis. But
from
when
cannabis,
you wick terpenes anyway, you're taking out the THC because
Yeah.
it's a steam distill. So
Yep.
it's even, and I had my terpene tested by customs after they seized an order coming in, and they did have to send it to me. I was about probably 20 milligrams short. But
they found no THC.
No THC. That's why they had to give it to me. So I'm sure it confused the hell out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah. The dogs picked it up. They just couldn't. They couldn't make it illegal.
Yeah.
But so I started the hemp wine that point in the United States using Mao's terpene from his wine. Had no idea what I was doing as far as alcohol goes. I remember just kind of looking it up, and I ordered application forms, and I sat on my living room floor for about a week and just did all the paperwork and created a label and sent it in, and they gave it to me.
And you became a bonded winery.
I became a bonded winery.
And you started
honestly,
making
it wasn't that difficult.
No. And so you started making it right in your garage, right? Right in
No,
Milton.
no. Not in my garage because I didn't have a garage. I lived in an apartment. So I rented this shack. It was basically a shack. It no longer exists because it was in such bad shape they bulldozed it over. But I got the shack going, and I created myself a winery out of that shack.
Wow.
Which was almost like different sets to take pictures of. Yes, I had the bottling area, and then 2 feet over, I took a picture of my processing area, and then my packaging area, and boy, it was basically just a 360 of the shack.
Yeah.
In different sets, you might say.
But you didn't know wine, so you had to go find someone who did, right?
Well, I needed some wine.
Yeah.
I drank some wine. I liked wine. I knew a little bit about wine. I knew I needed a white wine and a red wine because those are the kind of wines. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to live close to the Finger Lakes region of New York State. Big wine producer. Not nearly as many wineries back then as there are now.
Yeah.
But I went to the biggest one because I figured they had a lot of wine. And I had been laughed out. Actually, I had been laughed at a couple times by a couple smaller wineries there, and then I went to Glenora, and got an appointment somehow with the head of Glenora, and Steve and Gene Pierce and some of the majors at Glenora Winery. Couldn't find a babysitter that day. Had to take you with me in your little car seat. Took you in, propped you up on the counter there, and said, "Gentlemen, this is hemp-infused wine. This is what we can do." They were intrigued. Heck, I mean, it was before ice wine or some of these gimmicky wines.
Yeah.
And we put together, me and Steve, the winemaker at Glenora, spent about 2 weeks just making a wine. And he taught me so much about wine at that point, how the sugaring effects and the sulfites and how to treat it and how to store it. And I learned a lot, and we actually created a couple good wines.
Yeah.
And then got my backpack on, filled up a bunch of small bottles, the little splits like you would see in an airplane, and went down into Manhattan and just started going place to place, got myself a bunch of orders, and then ran back to Binghamton and started making all that wine and then delivering it down in the Jeep. And then I found a distributor in California, Mountain People, I remember that. And then I was in Whole Foods in California. Then I was in Hawaii. Then I was in Washington. Then I was in Oregon. Then I was in Nevada. And it just kept going again in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
And then there was an incident on CNN where they reported that Bill Clinton and Al Gore shared a hempen ale. There was my wine, and then there was hempen ale. Frederick Brewing Company had that. We had talked before because we were the only two ones that had gotten this label in through ATF.
Yeah.
And after that, I received a letter from Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And at that point, they were controlling all alcohol sales in the United States. And I was told that no new labels would be accepted until a hemp policy was implemented.
Yeah.
And at that point, we both got quite nervous talking with the Frederick Brewery people, saying this could be the end of us. And it certainly was. Shortly after that, I got a letter from Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms stating that I was allowed to sell through my inventory, and that was it.
Yeah.
And they revoked my labels.
Yeah. And so we know now the context of what was going on then. You need to talk about, Richard Rose with hemp nut and everything else that's going on in the hemp movement was getting
so
the
at
attention.
that time, so I had done some hemp expos myself and met Richard and a bunch of there's Stella from what was it? Planet Hemp or something. It was a clothing designer, and she was doing very well. Richard with the hemp nut, I remember, was doing very well. There was a lot of food products. Hemp seed oil that were coming out, and basically
Body
most
Shop.
of it, Body Shop. Yeah, I did my wine actually launched the Body Shop hemp line. We were there down in New York City with Woody Harrelson and Anita Roddick and so on and so forth, which I believe they just discontinued the hemp line, or
They actually added a CBD.
oh they
Body
did
Shop
they
just
oh okay
added
so they
CBD.
just upgraded
Yeah.
basically.
So
Yeah,
22 years later. Yeah.
your mom uses it, so
Yeah.
I just see it every now and then. But yes, it was most of the supply was coming in from Canada at that point. So the DEA got into it. They basically stopped everything at the border. They knew that a lot of these people were small companies. They could just bleed them dry by holding their inventory there. And it just really put a big dent into the hemp industry at that point. And the government achieved exactly what they were out to achieve.
Do you think there was a lot of momentum at that time?
Well, it was a lot of momentum, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were starting to gain the attention of some politicians. At the San Francisco Expo, I remember we had Willie Brown there. He was the mayor of San Francisco at that time. I believe Gavin Newsom was there too, I believe, as a young politician or hopeful politician at that point. But it was gaining a lot of attention and media, and again, it was the media attention that kind of doomed us.
Yeah.
At that point, because wow, how did it get on Air Force One?
Yep.
And if the president and vice president are consuming it, boy, we better watch out, because as we know now, the president's words do influence people.
Yeah, they do, and it's interesting you dig up those news stories about what happened, and I guess the contractor that was supplying the food and beverage said, "Oh, it was an oversight," blah blah. But I'm sure someone put that on there.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was intentional. So yeah, I mean, I think that story where hemp wine essentially ceases to exist in 98, 99,
Gone.
and that kind of parrots what was going on in the hemp industry in general. I mean, you see a lot of hemp products, and then you've got the lawsuits end up in 2004, HIA versus DEA, and you don't see a resurgence of the American hemp industry again until 2014, until the Farm Bill passes.
Right. And HIA was brand new at that point too. I used to put Hemp Industries Association logo on every single bottle,
Wow.
on every just to get that out too.
Yeah.
Maybe people would be interested in that. It was really the beginning of the internet. There wasn't much of a web presence then, so you were really dependent on say Hemp Times. I did a lot of advertising there, a lot of reviews, sending out my wine just to major newspapers.
Yeah.
Like Rocky Mountain News before they closed. They did a big piece on me, and I would take a lot of these articles from mainstream media and make copies of them and put them on poster boards. And whenever I'm out there, I would put out my legitimacy cards.
Yeah.
And that's
So the interesting thing is
how
now
I sold a lot.
you see what we call it the green rush, right? I mean, you have
Right now.
private equity, the suits are, but back then it was real grassroots, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really grassroots. I actually I remember got into a little trouble, with some of the hemp people by saying, hey, this is what we have to do. We have to get out of these tie-dyes. We have to get into the suits, and we have to start playing like real business people.
Yeah.
For people to take notice of us. And unfortunately, we kind of got what I asked for.
Yeah.
And look where we are now. We've got a lot of these suits in there, but they may be worse than a lot of the people in the tie-dyes as far as the business.
Yeah, I mean,
area
there.
goes.
And so let's just talk about let's fast forward to 2015, 2016 when you restarted hemp wine, right? And what were your feelings around that? I mean, you see the hemp industry, we're starting to see, obviously with the pilot program, people are talking about hemp again, but it actually, 2015, even 5 years ago, hemp was not what it is right now. It was not everywhere, right? So what were your kind of feelings as,
Well, I'll tell you,
we went to
in
restart
2015, when you conned me back into this business, there was a lot more attention being paid to hemp. There was a lot more national media stories. There was a lot more political interest into it at that point. I noticed that. If I hadn't have noticed that and realized how it had changed from going back into the 90s, early 2000s, that this may be the time. We've actually got a little momentum with states, especially in New York State. Things were starting to really happen there. Donna Lepardo was going hard. She's our assemblywoman. Right place, right time.
Yep.
I figured now's the time to get back into it. Unfortunately, things weren't quite as progressed as far as like legislation and regulation goes as they are now. But I think it was the right time to jump back into the hemp industry, and especially with. Back then, we had a few different products, and that was about it. Clothing was really emphasized at that point, back in the mid '90s and everything.
Yeah.
And it made some really nice inroads as far as clothing goes. The nutritional factor with Richard, and I mean he was on top of it back then. That's for sure. But there wasn't extracts. There wasn't so many products edibles were. I mean, my goodness, now there's edible vitamins. Everyone's gone on the edible gummy. There was no gummies back then. It's really expanded almost like scientifically.
Yeah.
Now, as opposed to then. So there's a lot more science going into it, which I like. There's a lot of carefulness now. Carefulness isn't really, I don't even know if that's a word, but there's a lot of caution and mindfulness that goes into developing products. I think with a lot of legitimate hemp manufacturers now. Yeah, sure, there's still some people that are putting out some garbage product, maybe some oil from China, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
But I think as we get into this, that will weed itself out, and we'll be back to a legitimate industry. And I think that's very important. But just even about a year or 2 years ago, there was that little kink where where CBD was becoming popular. Reporters were going in and buying CBD off the convenience store shelves or wherever and starting to independently test it. And then that gave me a little bit of worry when I started, to hear stories of there's no CBD in this. There's heavy metals in this. There's contaminants in this. This product is misrepresented. And then there's some people who are saying it's a cancer cure, whatever. There's no place for that right now.
Yeah.
And that gave me a little bit of hesitation.
Almost derailed the legitimacy.
I think it almost did derail the legitimacy. But thank goodness for places like New York State that jumped on that. Yes, some of the regulations are burdensome, and you don't necessarily want to do that. It costs you a little bit of money to go out and do it the right way.
Yeah.
And you have to invest in that. But boy, in the end, it's that's what's going to make that.
Because this isn't the 90s anymore.
It's not the 90s anymore.
This is something different.
This isn't even the 2000s.
This is a new era.
This is high tech.
Yeah.
And some of the products that some of these folks are starting to come out with now, I mean, blow me away. I never imagined there was the Delta 8 THC. Holy cow! I'm still trying to learn about that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm still trying to learn
the
about
different derivatives and
some of the extraction methods and techniques.
So, do you think though that there is almost a crisis of culture? I mean, so we went to the Indo Expo a couple years ago, right? And so, do you think though that the culture around cannabis is sort of being stripped down? And if that, do you see that as a problem or inevitability almost?
Well, I think it can be problematic. It is inevitable. It will take some time to sort everything out and find out what people are willing to consume, how they're willing to consume it, at what levels. Do I want to see everyone going around high? And no. But I do think in these crazy times that we're in, my goodness, when you lump in 2020, it's been one of the shit years I've ever seen, pardon my French, but it's horrible. And to see hemp products, cannabis products coming and addressing some of the needs that humanity is experiencing right now is pretty awesome to me. I mean, my goodness, when you see that CBD, and I've seen it firsthand with a lot of folks that are not wealthy. They cannot go to their own private little vacation spot and get through COVID.
Yeah.
And they're actually taking some tincture. They're taking some of our Farmer Select hemp bud, which I love, and not necessarily smoking it, but making a tea of it at night so that it relaxes them. They actually wake up and they say, wow, I had a good night's sleep. I was able to focus this morning. I feel like I can take on today. When every day is Groundhog Day, essentially here, and it's getting harder and harder to take on each and every day. And I don't think people necessarily want to go around high all the time. Yeah. And I think they're finding out that, wow, I can get some great benefit out of this. I can actually feel good mentally, physically, go attack the day, and not experience that intoxication. Yeah. And I think that's really opening up for hemp CBD right now. THC-free issues. Yeah. The Farmer Select energy drinks that we have coming out, and the relaxation drinks. I mean, they're wonderful. It's just we can incorporate the benefits of hemp and cannabis in a non-intoxifying way.
Or intoxifying. I mean,
sure, I love it myself.
Both,
But you have to have both.
Yeah.
And really, it brings the benefits of cannabis to the greater population.
So it's interesting because we hear you talk about the consumer and you talk about the customer and what this can do, but a lot of the industry is focused on analytics, earnings, growth. How many stores can you open, right? I mean, it's dominated by private equity.
Yeah, if people don't understand it, they're not going to buy it. Yeah. And if people don't buy it, all your investment goes up into the air.
Yeah. So do you think that it's a natural correction that a lot of these big firms, these private equity firms, they're just going to go away because people aren't going to buy their products? Because that's what we're seeing. They're not making the money that they wanted to. And so when you hear someone like, I mean, you're chief sales officer at Empire Standard, you are in charge of developing products, making sure these products are sold. And so do you think that the disconnection between the customer and the producer is really driving a lot of the failures in the cannabis industry right now?
Yes, I do. And that goes back to my hesitation here about a year ago when you started to hear a lot of these stories about maybe this is a con, maybe this is some fly-by-night gimmick. And it's not. And when people spend a lot of money to get a tincture that really isn't effective for them because A, they don't have dosage information, B, they don't have how high a milligram to buy and purchase. They don't have any information on its purity, where it was grown, who it was grown by, so on and so forth. Then they lose faith.
Yeah.
They lose a little bit of trust.
So what about
people? You have to be patient and gain that trust.
Yeah. Well, you got to be patient. And so patient. So what do you've seen people jump into the cannabis industry. They complain it's super hard. They have their heart bug, etc. What do you say? Because in some instances, I mean, listen, it's been hard since 1995, right?
Yep.
Kind of buckle up, right? I mean, so what do you think? What would you say to someone who's experiencing those troubles and looking at this industry and just throwing their hands up and like, I can't do this anymore?
Well, there's going to be a certain percentage of the people that throw their hands up and can't do it anymore and then go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would think a lot of those people were in it just to make a quick buck anyway.
Yeah.
They'll be on to the next, I don't know, sleep aid that's natural or whatever is going to come up.
Yeah.
Those people that know the benefits, believe in the product, know that they're putting out a good product. You got to have faith in what you're selling, and going out and telling people because it's your name and it's your word.
Yeah.
And those people, if they do everything correctly, step back and take a look at their business and say, how can we make this a good business that is efficient, keep the cost down, right? Keep your product close to you. Make sure you know who grew that.
Yeah.
I know who grew our stuff.
Yeah.
I know who processed it. It's us.
Yeah.
I have faith in this product. Then that's going to carry over to the customer.
Yeah.
And as it builds up and people try your product and they get benefit from that product or it meets their expectations, then you start to build a brand.
Yeah.
You start to build trust with the consumer, and then the sales start to come.
Yeah. And so let's talk about New York, because you've been in New York for the past 30 years, right?
A long time.
And so you're a New Yorker, and New Jersey's about to legalize. Massachusetts has legalized. Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor is talking about legalizing cannabis on Twitter every single day, right? So Vermont legalized, Maine. So it's inevitable. New York, it's coming. What do you think? New York is a special place for cannabis, or do you think it's just another one of these? And other states are going to add. It's another Colorado, et cetera. Do you think something special is happening here?
Yeah. Well, New York's a special place, period.
Yeah.
All right. As I like to say, it's the last bastion of civilization in the United States. Sorry. Governor Cuomo, we are first in New York. We like to do things and be pioneers. We have this already on the table.
Yeah.
Let's take action. All right. Do we need all these people? And this is what some of the fear is too. So New Jersey legalizes this year. It's on the ballot.
Yep.
It's going to pass. It's not going to be an issue. How many access points from downstate New York over into New Jersey, northern New Jersey, do we have?
Yep.
Can you police it? Absolutely not. Are we going to lose revenue on that? Absolutely.
And business opportunity.
Do we need revenue? Do we need new business opportunity? Do we need jobs? Right now, more than ever, right? So let's just be a little un-New York. Stop going through regulating. We've got a good base of regulation right now. It's already on the table from what I understand.
Yeah.
We just need some action.
Yeah.
We're going to have to take that action because we're going to be closed out.
Yeah, we are. And so with federal legalization, what about those who say New York is not the place to grow cannabis? It's not the Emerald Triangle. It's not,
You
California.
can grow cannabis anywhere.
It's not Oregon. Yeah.
You can grow cannabis anywhere.
Yeah.
What makes California any different from us? California has its own set of climate problems.
Yeah.
I don't know how much cannabis this past season was burnt to a crisp.
Yeah.
I don't know how much cannabis this season in California, Oregon, Nevada, wherever they want to grow out there, is tainted by the smoke and all the carcinogens that are in that smoke. In New York, we have water.
Yeah, we do. The largest amount of fresh water in the world.
I mean, we have a lot of benefits here to be growing cannabis. We actually have a climate, so we can develop strains that. In any lab, you can develop a strain, but if we want to go outside and we want to use Mother Nature to our advantage, we actually have a perfect climate to be growing cannabis here and to be growing hardy strains and to be growing like good strains. I'm sorry, a lot of the cannabis I've had from a lot of other states just is very average to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing really unique. Everything's been bred to death.
Yeah.
I think in New York we're just beautifully situated to excel in cannabis here.
So
I'm sorry, we do have one of the greatest city in the world right here too, New York City, and a wonderful farming community just 100 to 200 to 300 miles up the state. I mean, we can keep it all in state. Mm-hmm. We can keep it pure. We can keep our farmers going. We can keep our business people going. New York is perfectly situated for cannabis.
Yeah. And so as a vet, as an OG of the New York cannabis industry, what would you say to everyone that's thinking about New York and the future? Is it just the beginning here in New York?
Well, yeah, of course it's the beginning because we don't have legal cannabis yet. Yeah. We have to do this the right way in New York State. We have to get it out there. We have to be timely about it. Right now, we really do, because we're going to be surrounded.
Yep.
Let's get the legislation going. We already have regulations. Let's put it together. Let's stop all the infighting here. And New York, that's a critical thing.
Yeah.
Right? There's different regions of New York are different parts of New York State. It's almost like we live in 3 different states within a state. We're 3 different regions. The downstate region, I understand they want the revenue. I understand some of their populations may not be amenable right now to cannabis. Yeah. Right? But there's plenty of places in New York that are. Yeah. So let's stop this squabbling. Let's all, if we're going to take the tax revenue, let's pool it. Let's take some of it and put it towards social justice matters if that's what we're going to do. Let's put it towards schools if that's what we're going to do. But if we're just going to sit around and talk about that's what we're going to do and how we're going to divide the money, we're never going to do anything because we're not going to have any cannabis. Yeah. And then all our money is going to go to other states. Yeah. Why fill their coffers when we can be filling ours? Yep.
Well, thanks for sitting down. It was a great conversation.
Sure, sure. Sorry, I keep looking out the window. I'm just looking at this absolutely gorgeous New York State fall right now.
New York State fall. Yep. And it's almost over. We're going to have a beautiful New York winter.
Oh, lovely. Lovely. And then get ready for a great spring. I mean, hey, it's our winters and our falls and the leaves falling and everything else that goes into making this soil wonderful. Yeah. Look at the Colorado soil. My gosh, it's dirt. I mean, that's
Sand.
Real dirt.
Yeah.
Where they got to keep pushing fertilizer into it. We have the black gold here in like Washington County, and we're not pushing fertilizer into it all the time. This is organic stuff. This is glacier made, man. Yeah. Come on.
It's truly special.
Yes,
and it truly is the Empire State.
Yes, it is. Let's build a cannabis empire out of it too. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's
go. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yep. That was another episode of Empire State of Cannabis. Like, subscribe, follow us on Facebook for new episodes every other week.